Welcome to Lifespan. Forget everything you thought you knew about history. We're diving headfirst into the truly bizarre journeys of lives lived on the edge.
That's right. The lives that make you question, like, how did this actually happen?
Exactly. And today, get ready for the completely unhinged story of Howard Hughes.
Well, this one's a doozy.
Billionaire, aviator, movie mogul,
Mm-hmm.
and a man whose eccentricities went so far beyond quirky they basically became legendary. You guys sent in a ton of articles on him, and honestly, I'm still going to process it all. Where do we even begin with a life this monumental but also this deeply strange?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the scope of his achievements, right? But then you dive into the details of his life, and it's like, whoa, hold on a second. What was going on in that head of his?
Seriously. So
Yeah.
you've been digging into all of these sources. What really jumped out at you? What's the big takeaway here?
Well, I think what's really fascinating is how even the earliest glimpses of Hughes's life kind of hinted at the unusual path he would take. It wasn't just a case of, later life eccentricity like it popped up out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
The testimonies we have, they really suggest that the foundations were laid way earlier.
Okay, so let's talk about those early foundations. Like his mother's intense concern about his health, especially the fear of him getting polio. That seems like a pretty big deal in the sources.
Oh, absolutely. Back then, polio was a terrifying prospect. But the testimonies, they really emphasize that this wasn't just, your typical motherly worry. We're talking constant monitoring, extreme caution, almost to the point of obsession.
Right. It wasn't just, wear your coat, honey, it's cold outside. This was another level.
Totally.
Hmm.
And, while her concerns were obviously coming from a place of love, right, the constant vigilance, the hyper-focus on protecting him from illness, it might have, even if unintentionally, cultivated in young Howard, this really heightened sensitivity to germs and illness.
Almost like it planted the seed for his later anxieties.
Exactly. It's like from a young age, he was almost conditioned to be hyper-aware of potential threats to his health.
And even back then, there were those little hints, right? Those seemingly small behaviors, like always wanting unopened milk bottles or insisting on using his own soap in public restrooms.
Yeah, like little quirks that, in hindsight, you can see how they connected to his later obsessions.
It's almost like these were the first, subtle brushstrokes in a much bigger, more complex picture of his later, kind of extreme behaviors.
I think that's a great way to put it. Those early preferences, when you look at the full arc of his life, they don't seem so random anymore. They become these early manifestations of what would eventually develop into, full-blown obsessive-compulsive disorder.
And that's where things really take a turn, right? The sources describe how intense his germ phobia eventually became. I mean, wearing tissue boxes on his feet as shoes to avoid touching the floor, burning his clothes if someone just happened to cough near him. That's a whole other level of anxiety.
It's hard to even wrap your head around living with that much fear and worry,
Totally. So in the testimonies, they talk about how he used tissue boxes as barriers, not just shoes, on hotel floors. That's not
Yeah.
just being careful. That's...
Right? It speaks to this deep-seated, irrational fear that was driving his every move. And the burning clothes thing, I mean, come on, that's not a normal reaction. That's a fear that is completely taken over.
like his entire world revolved around avoiding germs.
It's like for him, germs were this invisible enemy, this constant threat. And his rituals, his obsessions, they were his way of fighting back, trying to maintain control in a world that probably felt incredibly chaotic and overwhelming.
It's almost like he built this fortress of rituals and routines to keep the germs at bay.
It's a really, really extreme example of how anxieties can manifest in these incredibly specific, incredibly rigid behaviors.
And it wasn't just about protecting himself, right? He also imposed these unbelievably detailed protocols on his staff. I mean, we're talking a step-by-step manual for how to open a can of peaches.
Right. How to remove the label without contaminating the fruit, how to scrub the can, wash it multiple times, pour it without any potential contact. It's like, wow, even peaches were a minefield for him.
Peaches. And it wasn't just peaches. Every single interaction, every single task had to be done according to his rules.
The level of control he needed to exert, it's fascinating, but also kind of scary,
So serving him food, that must have been a whole ordeal.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Imagine this, right? Yeah. Repeated hand washing,
Yeah.
like constant hand washing. Then layers upon layers of paper towels, everything covered, protected. It was more like prepping for surgery than serving a meal.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like, you need to be completely sterile to even enter his space.
If you think about it in the context of OCD, it makes a bit more sense. The hand-washing, the barriers, the rituals, they're all about neutralizing the perceived threat of contamination, even if that threat, to anyone else is pretty much non-existent.
It's like he was living in his own little bubble, his own little world where every surface, every object was potentially deadly.
And even something as simple as using a spoon, right? This involved wrapping the handle in like multiple layers of tissue paper, all secured with cellophane tape. I mean, can you imagine?
It's mind-boggling. Every single action, every detail had to be perfect, had to be controlled.
And then there were the bathroom instructions. Oh boy, the bathroom instructions.
What about them?
So according to the testimonies, he had this very specific, very strategic way of using tissues, like a copious amount of tissues for everything. Doorknobs, cabinet handles, you name it. It was all about minimizing contact, preventing any potential contamination.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
And you know what's really interesting? His massive wealth. It actually enabled him to delegate all of these compulsions.
So he didn't even have to do the rituals himself.
Well, he did to some extent, but he had a staff whose entire job was to follow his instructions, carry out his every command.
It's like his wealth insulated him from having to confront how irrational his behavior was.
It's a strange paradox, right? He had the resources to construct a reality that perfectly conformed to his anxieties, to his phobias. So the takeaway here isn't just about him being rich. It's that his wealth became a tool to directly address and maybe even amplify his eccentricities. It blurred the lines between, actual need and just whim.
It's like his money gave him the power to shape reality, to fit his anxieties. So as this germ phobia just took over his life, it's not surprising that he started withdrawing from public life. But it wasn't only about the germs, was it?
Right. There were other factors at play, like the testimonies mentioned chronic pain from his plane crashes, the increasing deafness. Those definitely contributed to his isolation.
Makes sense. It's like layer upon layer of challenges, all pushing him further and further away from the world.
It's important to remember it's rarely just one thing, right? Especially with someone as complex as Hughes. It was a combination of factors, both physical and psychological, all kind of feeding into each other.
It's like a perfect storm of circumstances, all leading him down this path of isolation.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the move to Las Vegas in 1966. Arriving by private train, planning a short stay at the Desert Inn, and then, boom, stays there for 4 years straight, never leaving his suite.
That's the stuff of legends right there.
Totally. I mean, the guy just decides he likes it there and refuses to leave. And what does he do? He buys the whole hotel.
Just like that, a casual multi-million-dollar purchase because you don't want to check out of your room.
It's a perfect example of how his eccentricities collided with his wealth, and the result is something completely bonkers.
And then that kicked off his casino shopping spree, as they call it, buying up all these huge properties on the Las Vegas Strip.
It's like his reclusiveness, his need to control his immediate surroundings, it just expanded outward. He couldn't control the whole world, but he could control this little corner of it, right?
He built his own little empire in the desert.
Yeah, an empire of casinos and hotels, all catering to his very, very specific needs.
So life inside these perpetually darkened hotel suites. I mean, constant twilight. Reports of him sitting naked in the dark. It's like he built his own very strange private universe.
It's like he was trying to shut out the world, to create this controlled environment where he could escape from all the things that made him anxious.
And the Kleenex boxes everywhere, that really emphasizes how all-consuming his germ phobia was.
It wasn't just a thought. It was a constant, tangible presence in his physical space. Kleenex boxes were like furniture in his world.
It's both fascinating and kind of heartbreaking, this brilliant mind trapped in this prison of its own anxieties.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the power of fear, how it can warp your perception of reality.
Then there's that weird detail about him watching Ice Station Zebra over and over again, hundreds of times. What's that about?
Honestly, that one's a head-scratcher. But maybe, for someone as isolated as Hughes, finding comfort in repetition and something familiar and predictable, maybe that was his way of finding peace.
Like a little escape from the chaos of his own mind.
Possibly. And then, of course, there's the Mormon Mafia, his inner circle of aides. They basically ran his life, right?
They were his gatekeepers, his connection to the outside world, managing his affairs, enforcing his increasingly bizarre demands.
They enabled his reclusive lifestyle, but they also played a huge role in perpetuating his eccentricities.
It's like they created this feedback loop where his isolation led to more unusual behavior, which led to more isolation and so on.
And the longer he stayed secluded, the more his physical appearance deteriorated. The descriptions from the time he arrives in Vegas are shocking. Emaciated, long, unkempt hair and nails. It's like he'd completely given up on taking care of himself.
And the irony, right, this extreme obsession with germs, but then this complete disregard for his own physical well-being.
It's a classic paradox in severe OCD cases. The focus on external threats can become so overwhelming that it completely overshadows basic self-care.
It's like his fear of the outside world consumed him to the point where he neglected himself entirely.
And the sources suggest that his heavy codeine use, which was for his chronic pain, probably made things worse.
It's a sad picture, honestly. But then you have these stories of his outrageous spending habits. Buying the Desert Inn just because he didn't want to leave. That's peak Howard Hughes right there.
It shows how his wealth could completely distort reality. He could literally buy his way out of any inconvenience, no matter how absurd.
Then there's the whole thing with him buying KLAS TV so he could watch movies whenever he wanted. Essentially his own private, on-demand streaming service. Decades before Netflix.
He was controlling the programming, demanding restarts, the whole 9 yards. It's like, talk about entitlement.
The man had his own TV station. But wait, there's more.
Oh, yeah, a radio station so he could listen to his preferred music. Another hotel just to get rid of a light he didn't like. It's almost comical.
Almost. But it also shows how detached he was from normal life, from the constraints that most people face.
It's like he was living in a different dimension, where money could literally solve any problem.
But it wasn't all about personal whims, right? He also undertook these massive, ambitious projects, like Project Azorian, his collaboration with the CIA to recover a sunken Soviet submarine.
That was huge. It shows that even as he retreated further into isolation, he still had this drive, this ambition to do these incredible, almost unbelievable things.
Like from tissue boxes on his feet to a top-secret Cold War operation.
It's a wild juxtaposition, isn't it?
Oh.
The man contained multitudes, that's for sure.
So in his later years, contact with the outside world was basically non-existent, filtered through memos, phone calls, and that inner circle.
He was living in this self-created bubble, completely detached from reality. And his obsession with movies, that became his window to the world, his form of entertainment.
It's like he was living vicariously through these films, experiencing life from a safe distance.
But even in isolation, he still tried to exert influence, reportedly bribing presidents, lobbying against nuclear testing.
He may have been physically withdrawn, but he still had his fingers in some very powerful pies.
It's like he couldn't fully disconnect. He still needed to control, to manipulate, even from afar.
And then you have that whole incident with the supposed autobiography and his rare phone call to deny involvement.
That really highlights how much he hated public attention. He wanted to control his narrative, to keep the world at bay.
In his own words, things like feeling he could buy or destroy anyone, it's pretty chilling, honestly.
It speaks to a certain level of detachment from reality, a sense of power that's, well, a little unsettling.
Power corrupts, as they say.
Especially when it's coupled with isolation and paranoia.
Then there's the Melvin DeMar story, the gas station owner, who claims he gave a ride to a disheveled Hughes in the desert and ended up in his will. Sounds like something out of a movie.
It's a wild tale, and it just adds to the mystery surrounding Hughes. Was it true? Who knows? But it fits perfectly into the narrative of his bizarre life.
And the rumors of secret marriages, like the one with Terry Moore, they just add another layer of intrigue.
It's like, we may never know the full truth about his personal life. He was so secretive, so guarded.
Of course, all of this fueled a ton of conspiracy theories. The Watergate connection, for example.
Nixon was apparently convinced that Hughes was involved somehow, that he was a threat. And given Hughes's history with the CIA, it's not hard to see why those theories took hold.
And then you have the truly out there stuff, like the Gemstone file, with claims of kidnapping and global conspiracies. It's like a spy thriller gone rogue.
It shows how Hughes's reclusiveness, his secrecy, made him this blank slate onto which people could project their wildest imaginations.
He became this mythical figure, this larger-than-life enigma.
And his relationships with women, they were just as unconventional. He was known for his affairs with Hollywood stars, but then there were those strange contracts he offered to young actresses.
Controlling their careers, dictating their appearances.
It was all about power, about exerting his influence over their lives. The story about him designing a special bra for Jane Russell in The Outlaw. That's classic Hughes.
Obsessive, controlling, and always pushing the boundaries.
And the contract with Gina Lollobrigida, essentially preventing her from working with other studios, that's a whole other level of control.
It's almost like he collected these women like they were trophies or possessions.
It's a disturbing pattern. And it speaks to a certain disregard for their autonomy, for their own desires and aspirations.
And you have his eating habits, the 12 peas with his steak, the months-long chocolate bar and milk diet. It's all so strange.
It's like his need for control extended even to his food. Every bite had to be perfect, had to fit his very specific, very peculiar preferences.
And the banana nut ice cream story, ordering a huge batch of a discontinued flavor and then rejecting it, it's both hilarious and kind of sad.
It shows how even when he got what he wanted, he wasn't satisfied. It's like there was this constant emptiness, this void he was trying to fill.
And then, of course, there's the codeine addiction.
Whether it was true addiction or just a result of his chronic pain, it's clear that he was heavily reliant on medication.
It's another example of how his wealth, his ability to get whatever he wanted, ultimately contributed to his downfall.
And his custom-designed hospital bed. That speaks volumes about his need for control, even over his own medical care.
In the end, despite all his money and power, his health deteriorated. He was emaciated, neglected, and heavily medicated. A sad end to a truly extraordinary, if bizarre, life.
It's a cautionary tale, really. A reminder that even with unimaginable wealth and success, untreated mental health issues can have devastating consequences.
So what do we make of this whole bizarre journey? Howard Hughes's life is a reminder that brilliance and eccentricity can go hand in hand, but it also shows us the dark side of unchecked compulsions and isolation.
It's a story that raises more questions than answers, but it's definitely one that stays with you.
It makes you think about the human condition, about the power of our minds, and the fragility of even the most extraordinary lives.
What aspects of his life do you guys find most unsettling? Or maybe even understandable given what we know about his anxieties?
It's a life that continues to fascinate and spark debate long after his death. What will you explore further about this unhinged chapter of history? Share, rate, and follow the show for more wild stories.